As I was preparing for my reflection this morning, Magnificat, the worship aid, said this of Teresa of Avila, who was born in Spain in 1515. She was a remarkable woman of integration. She worked as hard as Martha at the many tasks of establishing convents of Carmelite reform, but she drew her energy from the hours she spent sitting at the feet of Jesus and listening to him. This woman was a mystic, a religious reformer, and one of the most outstanding masters of prayer in our Catholic Church. Now, in her early years as a nun, she did not evidence any of these qualities. Instead, she was burdened with illness, and her father had to bring her home to convalesce. She was paralyzed for 3 years when she returned to the convent. Her prayer life was tepid and superficial, and her progress was not helped by the lax conditions of the convent. In fact, the strictness of life by the original Carmelite rule had been so diluted over the years that the convent in Avila had come to resemble a boarding house of wealthy maidens rather than a house of prayer. At the age of 39, she experienced a conversion. Viewing the image of the crucified, she began to experience a loathing for the condition of her own spiritual life, and she set a course to deepen her prayer life. Among all the saints, then and now, few rival the variety and depth of her mystical experiences. And advanced as she was in prayer, she could still speak to the common person in their language when she described prayer, in her view, as nothing but a friendly exchange and frequent solitary conversation with Him who we know loves us. This from a woman who had received the most rarefied heights of spiritual wisdom. Her growth in prayer was such that she would come to fully experience what St. Paul spoke of today in the letter that we heard, the letter to the Ephesians. We were chosen by God, that God adopted us and took us into His abode. And seeking to cleanse us of sin, He submitted to the agony of the cross and shed His blood for our sakes. And lest we thought that He abandoned us, He revealed to us the path to follow that we might possess the fullness of life. And like Jesus, who condemned the woes of the religious leaders yesterday and today in the Gospels, Teresa would come to critique the nuns who had spent much of their time in the parlor, entertaining visitors and gentlemen callers. She set about establishing 17 new convents, and the nuns were to live entirely by alms and their own labor. And they became known as discalced Carmelites, the shoeless, ones who wore sandals that were made of kempt. Henceforth, convents were to be enclosed, the diet vegetarian, and they were to follow a rigorous schedule of prayer. Like Jesus, she was met with serious opposition, but she prevailed. She died in 1582, was canonized 40 years later, and in 1970 was the first woman to be named a doctor of the Catholic Church. Saint Teresa, who we celebrate today, models for us the words spoken by St. Paul yesterday in his letter to the Galatians, the first reading at Mass. If we live in the Spirit, let us follow the Spirit. She did. We do. And let us pray that we will.